Thanks, everybody. Good evening. Fingers crossed the internet connection holds up for me here. I'm just going to start to share my screen and get my slides up here. This worked well in rehearsal, so hopefully you're seeing them now. Good. Thank you, Keith. Okay. I'm going to have just a touch of review from the last time I was able to speak to you all because I think it's worth reviewing. In terms of disclosures, there's none. But where I like to start is where we often with mental health literacy team, that's who I'm with, and we work with schools across Alberta to develop good mental health literacy. We do that through parent trainings, through teacher trainings, and through student curriculum and lesson plans. So this is directly from something that is shared amongst all those groups, which is our mental health triangle. And the idea is that the entire population fits on this triangle somewhere. You can actually be in multiple categories at the same time. But the idea is more people have mental distress. That's just common everyday stress. A mental health problem is when you're experiencing something that's outstripped that stress, your coping mechanisms for that stress. COVID is a perfect example of this. And then at the top, we've got a mental disorder such as an anxiety disorder. We want to make sure that we're creating this clarity so that people don't show up in your office saying that they have a COVID anxiety disorder, that we're keeping this clear, that we're not adding extra diagnoses, and we don't see that sort of fracture point diagnostically. Mental health is a concept that surrounds all of these different mental states. You can fluidly move between the mental states depending on what your situation is, but mental health is a concept that stays with us. So even if you have a mental disorder, you'll have your mental health. So we found good luck with this model. There's a YouTube video that I've got a link for, or I'll put it in the chat box a little bit later. The full rundown, it takes about 5 minutes for this. But when we're talking about return to school and potential worries, I thought I'd brainstorm some of the worries you might see with youth. Students are worried about interference with their academic plans. They're worried about being the first youth in a school that gets sick. Nobody wants to cause an outbreak. Students are worried about the amount of school that you miss with an illness. We're immediately sending kids home or we're isolating them. What's that process going to be? Service somebody frozen to me. We're still there. Good. Okay, you're back. How long was I missing? I'll just carry on. Sorry, I can't hear you, Rick. Okay, we're good again. All right, some other potential parental worries. One of the things I'm hearing from parents is there is a concern of whether they will be judged for deciding to keep their kid at home or to put them back in. We're seeing damages extending to other family relations. So grandparents are now cut off from their kids because parents are concerned that they may now be a vector for the virus to come into the home. And this is causing a lot of fears. We're also seeing concern about, well, if I hold them out, will we see academic disruption? If I keep them with me, am I qualified to teach them? And all of those different challenges. And I think you're going to see this list, in addition to a whole host. Parents will be pretty clear about telling you about the worries that they're experiencing, but these are some of the ones you may be seeing in your offices. So what do we want to do with parents? Number one, regulate yourself first. I think the perfect analogy in this is when you get on a plane and they tell you put your own oxygen mask on before that of somebody that you're helping. We want to make sure that parents are regulating in the way that they're getting those messages to their youth. Have a plan that follows those health guidelines. Get your information from good sources. Having a plan that's flexible is okay. Remember the locus of control. You can only control the things that are inside of that locus. So, for example, you've got parents that are sending their kids to schools because they're concerned about all of the academic worries, but they're also concerned about grandparents at home. Well, what can they control? They can control that separation. They can have a plan for how they're going to visit with grandparents or not visit. They can't control who's going to wear a mask around their kid or who's not, right? They have to make sure that they're keeping it inside their own locus. Make sure that you get parents to check their child's thinking. Sometimes what we assume that they're worried about is not what they're worried about. Kids can have developed some funny ideas where they overestimate or underestimate the risk that's affiliated with COVID. They may have heard rumors or had their information from bad sources. That can be a problem. Really have parents work on those scripts for youth about maintaining social distance, how to back off from that appropriately, or any other kind of concern. Giving those kids those sentence starters so that they have them when they go to school in their back pocket can be really useful. Establish new routines. How many masks should we have? Do you keep it in a brown paper bag? Is their name written on it? There are going to be a bunch of new routines as we go back to school. Best to find out from the school as soon as possible and practice them with youth at home, talk about their concerns, clarify any misconceptions. And then, as always go back to good mental health basics. And we know what supports good mental health. What's good for your body is good for your brain, right? That's part of it. Good sleep, good diet, good exercise, positive social connections. So when parents are concerned, we need to direct them back to the things that we know we have evidence for in supporting their positive mental health and that of their child. Joanne may talk about this a little bit more in her section, but we've been collaborating with the 4 urban boards of Edmonton Public, Edmonton Catholic, Calgary Public, and Calgary Catholic. And I was lucky enough to be on that committee. It's been fantastic to work with folks to generate a resource for youth that are returning to school. You'll notice I'm going to play it for you now. What we did is we generated a little Powtoon video. It's an animated short of the key messages we think we need to be sending to youth. Turns out that they're the same key messages that we need to send for adults as well as teens. We have developed resources for all of those different populations. This is the elementary one that you're about to see. This is a draft. I've decided that we are going to make one more little change because in the video I misspeak and I say that the brain is a muscle. The brain is not a muscle, as I'm sure you're all well aware. But we wanted to say the brain is like a muscle. So we're going to fix that up. But this is the Powtoon that we're going to play for youth. And then the school has developed lessons that support the key learnings in this. So have a listen and watch.
You've probably heard adults or other kids say things like, "I'm so stressed," or "that stresses me out." But what does that really mean? What is stress all about anyways? Stress is normal and natural, and it happens to everyone. It happens to kids, it happens to teenagers, and it even happens to adults. And stress can be caused by all sorts of things. Like the time your mom flipped her lid when she discovered that you drew all over the wall with her favorite lipstick. Yep, that's stress all right. You see, our brain and our body are connected. They work together as a team. When we feel worried or unsure about something, our brain sends a special signal to our body. It's called the stress response. The stress response helps to get us ready to face the things that come our way. Let's do some pretending to learn more. Let's pretend it's Jasmine's first day of school. She hasn't seen the other students, the teachers, or the principal for a long time. Maybe Jasmine feels nervous about going back to school. Maybe she didn't sleep well the night before. Her face feels extra warm, or her heart is beating faster than usual. What Jasmine is experiencing in her body is called the stress response. Or let's pretend James has a presentation to give in front of his class. Maybe James feels worried because he really wants to do a good job in front of his teacher and his friends. Maybe his hands are shaky. His tummy has butterflies, or his voice sounds a bit wobbly. What's happening to James? Yep, you got it. James is experiencing the stress response. Just like Jasmine and James, when we're faced with something new or tricky, it's totally normal for our stress response to show up. In fact, we can even expect our stress response at these times. Although there are some types of stress that are not good for us, most of the time stress is actually helpful. When we're brave and we're able to face our worries, we build a stronger brain. It's true. Our brain is a muscle. The more we practice something, the better we get at it. And our stress response gets smaller and smaller. It also turns out that how we think about stress makes a big difference too. Let's go back to Jasmine's story. Jasmine can say to herself,
"This is too scary. I want to stay home."
Which will make her nervous feelings even worse. Or she can say something to herself like,
"This is my stress response. It happens to everyone. I feel nervous, but I can get through this. I might even have fun at school."
This will help her nervous feelings get smaller. Let's go back to James's story. James can say to himself,
"This is too much. I can't do the presentation. I'm gonna mess up."
Which will make his worried feelings and his stress response even bigger. Or he can say something to himself such as,
"It's normal to feel worried right now. My presentation might not be perfect, but I can handle it. I will be brave and try my best.
This will help James's worried feelings get smaller. But wait, there's more. Our breath is a super strategy inside of us all. When we practice calm breathing, oxygen goes to our brain, which turns down the volume on our stress signal. This helps our brain and our body feel more relaxed. When we're calm, it's easier for us to face our worries and do the things that we need to do.
Let's try starfish breathing. Take one hand and open your fingers like a starfish. Great. Now take your other hand and make a pointer finger. Start at the bottom of your thumb. Slowly trace your starfish with your pointer finger. Breathe in while you go up and breathe out while you go down. That's right. Up and down, in and out. Do this for all 5 fingers on your starfish. Try not to go too fast or too slow. You want to find your own just right speed. Everyone's just right speed might be a little different. That's okay. You can do starfish breathing as many times as you want until you feel calmer.
Let's try box breathing. This strategy is extra fun with a pencil and paper. If you like, you can pause the video now to get yourself a pencil and paper. Okay, draw a start button on the left side of your page. Great. Now draw a line across for the top of your box, then a line down for the right side of the box, and lines for the bottom and the other side. It should look something like this. Good. Now put your pencil down and make a pointer finger with your hand. Put your pointer finger on the start button. Breathe in as you slowly trace the top of the box with your finger. Hold your breath as you trace the side. Breathe out as you slowly trace the bottom. And hold your breath again while you trace the other side. Good. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. Just like with starfish breathing, you will want to find your own just right speed. Trace around the box as many times as you need to feel calmer.
And lastly, remember, there are times when stress can feel too big for kids to handle alone. We all need help sometimes. When this happens, it's really important that you ask a trusted adult for support. Your trusted adult might be a parent, a foster parent, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a teacher, a principal, or a coach. All kids have different trusted adults in their lives. The important thing is to reach out for help when you need it. So the more we know about stress and how it works, the easier it becomes to handle. To learn more about how your brain and body are connected, check us out at teenmentalhealth.org.
We want people to make sure that they're looking at what they can control. We know avoidance and withdrawal are going to be potentially even more stress-provoking over the long term. We want them to go through where it's safe to do so, but to deal with that stress response directly. Finally, I'm just going to point out, and I did this in the last time I spoke as well, that there are resources. We've provided COVID tip sheets, and we've posted our parent one today, so you can check it out at teenmentalhealth.org. We have a special tab at the top of the website there to get those types of resources for parents. The COVID tip sheet for returning to school is there as well. If we're looking for outside resources, Anxiety Canada has excellent resources that you can direct patients to as well. So I'd promised myself that I'd be brief and be gone. So if there's any questions, they can come through Keith or Rick or through the chat box, and I'll thank you for the time.
Andrew, as usual, that was a great talk, and my brain muscle forgot to tell people that they could use the chat line on the right-hand side of their YouTube screen to be able to put some questions down. Dr. Koshla did ask a question which I think is really pertinent. The whole concept of masking for many people is anxiety creating, and I found even in a lot of my adult patients, the mask almost feels smothering to them. But yet the mask is really something that's going to be part of our life, and I understand part of school days, which Joanne will touch on later. How do you help parents sort of reframe that conflict or contradiction that masks are good, but masks may make you feel anxious?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think that with the younger kids, we want to get some practice in. We want to know the points of what the mask is going to do for us. We can practice at home with the mask. We can become familiar. And I think we can go out and name what it is that feels uncomfortable at the mask. We can't see people's facial expression, and that can be really disorienting for people. And I've certainly seen people pull down their masks, so we can teach little kids. We start to need to use some hand gestures and how things are going. We can practice some other tips around social cueing where I'm having a hard time, and we're going to have to build in that understanding for people that emotionally we're not going to be able to, as well, to read each other. So it is a challenge. I think we need to explain those challenges to kids, but then balance them out with what the benefits are, and work from that perspective. I think the physical discomfort, even for myself, I've noticed that some masks work better. So there may be a period of trial and error that people can go through to find the right one for them. I think we're going to have to just develop a new routine, and all routines feel uncomfortable for the first part, and then encourage them to just keep going through that. Same thing with the stress response. It feels awkward early. The more we practice, the farther we get.
Thanks very much, Andrew. I think the other thing that I would say, there was a comment in the chat line about parents being worried about grandparent exposures, kids bringing the virus home, and that elderly parents, grandparents could be affected. I think I really want to highlight your question earlier about asking kids what it is they're afraid of. Are they picking up on their parents' fear of COVID impacting their parents? Have them identify that fear rather than make that assumption that kids must be scared about.
Yeah, I think we've certainly seen that. Clarifying those fears is so helpful, so important. Especially what we're finding with teens is that it may be really important to look at, I don't want to call it distraction, but how to refocus that youth, of course, onto something that can be pro-social. So I know you're cut off from grandma, but let's think of ways that we can actively help her now, and what kind of acts of service could we do outside of having direct contact with her, can we do to support her? And that's actually shown some preliminary evidence that that's quite helpful for youth. So reorienting them to how they can contribute can really be helpful.